President Trump's tariffs are kicking in and Americans are paying more for a range of items, including groceries.
The prices seems to go up every week, every month.
The price is killing me. Instead of saving money in my bank account, I'm using it in groceries.
Imagine walking into Walmart to grab your usual groceries for the week. But as you check the price tags, you stop in your tracks. That bag of coffee you buy every morning, it's jumped by nearly $2. Eggs, the simplest breakfast staple, are up 25%. And that's just the beginning. Starting August 1st, President Trump's new tariffs officially took effect. But instead of pressuring other countries into backing down, the opposite is happening. Major food exporting nations are striking back.
This is all full of produce from Canada. This one is all full of produce from Mexico.
Cutting supply or raising prices straight into the pockets of American consumers. Walmart, Costco, Kroger, they're no longer the budget-friendly options they used to be. And if you're over 50 living on retirement or a fixed income, this is hitting your dinner table directly. So what are the 7 essential groceries Americans rely on that are now spiking in price because of these backfiring tariffs?
Shoppers in the United States are stocking up on imported goods.
If you don't know yet, watch until the end, so you can adjust your weekly spending before it's too late. Number 1, canned beans. In many parts of America, especially across the Midwest and the South, canned beans aren't just a side dish. They're the backbone of everyday meals for millions of working-class Americans, especially seniors and households relying on food stamps. At just a few cents per serving, beans were once considered one of the most nutritious and affordable options during times of inflation. But in just the first 3 weeks of August, canned bean prices at many grocery stores have jumped from 79 cents to $1.09. That might not sound like much, but stretch that over a month, over a year, and it becomes real pressure for anyone counting every dollar. Especially when that increase isn't just for one can of beans, but part of a wave of price hikes on dozens of essentials. So what's driving a cheap staple like beans to become harder and harder to afford? The answer lies deep within the supply chain, somewhere most shoppers never think to look. The majority of canned beans sold in the US, especially pinto black and navy beans, are packaged in imported tin plate cans. And tin doesn't come out of the ground in Texas or Ohio. It's mostly sourced from trade partners like Mexico and Canada. But ever since President Trump enacted a new round of tariffs on imported metals, including tin and aluminum from those countries, the cost of producing food packaging in the US has surged. What happens next? It's not just manufacturers feeling the squeeze. Distributors, from Walmart's private labels to major brands like Bush's Best and Goya, have been forced to raise prices or even scale back production. Some grocery stores in Michigan and Illinois have reported pinto bean shortages lasting over 2 weeks, something that hasn't happened since the pandemic. But the scariest part isn't just the price, it's the feeling of losing a safety net. For many seniors, beans weren't just cheap, they were food security. When meat got too expensive, when eggs were scarce, when gas passed $4 a gallon, that 79-cent can of beans used to be the last safe option. Now even that feels uncertain. And when your last fallback starts slipping away, it's hard not to feel anxious about what's next. Have you ever thought about stocking up on canned beans for winter? Maybe you used to think that sounded excessive. But at this rate, in just another month, beans might not be a budget food anymore. So the question is, if even beans are rising in price, what's going to be the next to go? Take a look at your pantry. How many cans do you have enough for 2 weeks? Enough for the cold season ahead? And if not, what would you replace them with? No one knows how long these tariffs will last. But one thing's for sure, the first ones to pay the price won't be corporations. It'll be the people pushing shopping carts every weekend with a short list and just enough to feed their family for the next 7 days. Number 2, ground coffee. Every morning, millions of Americans start their day with a cup of coffee. Maybe it's brewed at home. Maybe it's picked up from 7-Eleven or Dunkin'. But no matter how it's made, coffee has long been a daily ritual, especially for those over 50 who savor each sip as a way to shake off the chill and fatigue of early mornings. But in the past 3 weeks, that ritual has become noticeably more expensive. According to the National Coffee Association, the average price per pound of ground coffee in the US has risen nearly 13% since August 1st. Popular brands like Maxwell House Folgers and even Costco's Kirkland are all quietly creeping up in price, week by week, cent by cent, until one day, your usual can has crossed the $12 mark without warning. So what's behind the volatility of a product that once felt so simple? It's not a shortage of beans. It's not because Americans are drinking more. It's because new tariffs from the Trump administration have triggered price hikes from international suppliers, especially Brazil, Colombia, and Vietnam, as a form of retaliation. It may seem like a political chess game between nations, but in reality, it's middle-aged Americans who are feeling the impact first, because they're the most loyal consumers of ground coffee. While younger generations lean toward canned cold brew oat milk lattes and other trendy alternatives, those over 50 remain loyal to their hot drip coffee brewed from traditional ground beans. And here's the bitter truth: you didn't change your taste, but rising prices are forcing you to change your habits. Think back to this morning. Did you use less coffee than usual? Reuse the old grounds one more time. Hesitate before opening a new can. You're not alone. Millions of Americans are doing the same, not because they want to, but because they have to in order to stretch every dollar across rising bills for gas, electricity, and prescriptions. Coffee used to be a small daily comfort for the worn out. Now it's becoming a test of how much control you still have over your everyday life. Most people don't realize that 70% of the coffee consumed in the US is imported. And a large portion of that comes from countries currently imposing retaliatory tariffs on American goods. That means, unless the tariff war ends, soon coffee prices won't just go up year by year. They'll spike week by week, shipment by shipment. And if you've ever thought it's just a little coffee, how much can it cost? Do the math. A $1 increase per pound means 15 to 20 fewer cups brewed at home. That's at least $15 more per month just to keep up with a habit you've had for a lifetime. For those living on a fixed income, that's no small change. So what about you? If your favorite coffee goes up another $2 or $3 per can, what will you do? Cut back. Switch to a cheaper brand. Or trim other expenses just to preserve your morning cup. Whatever your answer, one thing is clear. The calm that used to come from caffeine now comes from affordability. And when even coffee stops being affordable, maybe it's time to reassess your entire spending routine. Number 3, imported beef. In many American households, beef isn't just food, it's a symbol. A Sunday dinner with a hearty pot roast, a weekend barbecue burger with family, or a perfectly marinated steak for Thanksgiving. Each represents something deeper: abundance, pride, and a feeling of living the American way. But what happens when that symbol gets pushed out of reach? Since early August, the price of imported beef at major retailers like Walmart, Sam's Club, and Kroger has jumped between 14% and 19% depending on the cut and the country of origin. Beef from Argentina, Australia, and even Canada. Sources that account for nearly a third of supply in border states, is now considered a premium product that many shoppers think twice about before adding to their carts. The reason isn't hard to understand. The Trump administration's new retaliatory tariffs, aimed at countries with large trade surpluses with the US, are now backfiring, hitting everyday Americans in the cold aisle, especially as countries like Brazil, New Zealand, and Uruguay respond by tightening export quotas or raising prices to make up for their own losses. But what frustrates people most isn't just the price tag. It's the way they've been forced to accept it. No warning, no explanation. A package of ground beef that once sold for $7.99 is now $9.59, presented as if nothing changed. Suddenly, the dinner you used to take for granted, a slow-cooked beef stew, a perfectly seared ribeye, has become a test between what you want and what you can afford. Have you ever asked yourself, why does a country like the US, famous for its livestock industry, need to import so much beef in the first place? The answer lies in market segmentation. Most of the high-quality beef that American consumers prefer, lean, tender, nicely marbled, comes from specialized farms abroad. Meanwhile, more and more domestic beef is funneled into the mass processing industry where consumers only see it once it's ground up and shrink-wrapped. The result: everyday American shoppers aren't just feeling the squeeze, they're losing their options. They have to choose between paying more for imported beef or settling for lower quality alternatives. And in a country that prides itself on agricultural innovation, this isn't just a story about inflation anymore. It's a matter of dignity. Perhaps the most bitter part is the feeling of being left behind. When gas prices go up, you can drive less. When electricity costs rise, you can switch off the lights. But when beef, something tied so closely to culture, tradition, and family, becomes a luxury, it's not just a material loss, it's an emotional one. Did you used to cook beef on the weekends? Was it your go-to meal when your kids came over? If now you're swapping it out for frozen chicken hot dogs or instant noodles, how does that feel? Share your thoughts. Let us know if you too feel that beef today isn't what it used to be, not just in price, but in what it represents in American life. Number 4, eggs. Do you remember when buying eggs at the grocery store used to be so simple you barely had to think about it? You'd stroll past the refrigerated section, grab a dozen medium or large eggs for under $3. Done. But over the past 3 weeks, things haven't been that easy. At major chains like Kroger, Walmart, and Albertsons, egg prices have suddenly spiked. A basic carton of 12 non-organic, non-cage-free eggs is now selling for over $4.39, nearly a 40% increase in just 1 month. In some parts of California, prices for the exact same eggs have hit $5.29. The official reasons: higher feed costs, supply shortages, and unstable market conditions. But look closer, and another factor is quietly steering the trend: new tariffs on imported livestock feed and farming equipment from U.S. trading partners imposed earlier this August. No one's saying it outright, but the ripple effect of retaliatory tariffs is now reaching chicken farms in Iowa, Pennsylvania, and Missouri. When the price of imported corn and soybeans goes up, when farm automation tools become more expensive, farmers are left with no choice but to pass those costs on to consumers. And as always, it's people on fixed incomes, those relying on tight budgets or government support, who feel the pinch first. Just picture it. You walk into the store, head toward the egg shelf like usual, but this time you pause. Your hand hesitates. Do you grab the dozen or scale back to a 6-pack? Or maybe you settle for those ultra-thin-shelled, watery industrial eggs, the ones nobody really likes, but you take anyway because what else can you do? That's the most unsettling moment when you're still the same you. But the small routines you've always taken for granted now make you feel like you're asking for permission to meet your own basic needs. And if eggs were a regular part of your mornings, scrambled, poached, folded into pancakes, or tossed into a salad, then this change isn't just about money. It's a disruption, a quiet, creeping loss of rhythm, a sense that you're no longer fully in control. You might not talk about it, but no one enjoys cutting back on eggs. A food that just a few years ago was considered the cheapest and most complete source of nutrition around. Take a look at your fridge. When was the last time you bought eggs? Were you surprised by the price? Have you found yourself adjusting your portions? Cutting back by 1 egg a day, replacing it with something cheaper, or simply cooking less to save a few cents? There's no shame in any of that. But what is shameful is this: in a country that proudly calls itself an agricultural powerhouse, everyday Americans are having to weigh the choice between grade A and grade B eggs, all over a handful of change. And the worst may still be ahead. If this cycle of tariffs continues, other livestock-based staples, like milk, cheese, and meat, could see similar domino-like price hikes. When that happens, will eggs still count as a budget-friendly option? What do you think? Ask your neighbor, someone from your church, or an older relative. When was the last time they bought a dozen eggs for under $3? And would they be willing to pay more to keep that familiar comfort on the table? Number 5, bread and cereal. If there's one thing that used to bring a sense of peace every morning, it was a slice of toast or a bowl of cereal. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, nothing time-consuming. Just a little butter, a glass of milk, and your day began. Just like it always had. But then, one Monday morning, you reach for your usual loaf of bread at Walmart and freeze. A new price tag flashes in bold yellow: $3.29. Just last week, it was $2.39. That's nearly a 40% jump with no explanation. Why would something long considered the cheapest thing on the shelf suddenly skyrocket? The answer isn't a wheat shortage or lazy farmers. It lies in the wheat supply chain, from Canada, Ukraine, and Argentina, now caught in a wave of retaliatory tariffs following U.S. trade moves effective August 1st. These exporting countries are either raising prices to protect their domestic markets or redirecting shipments to Asia where they get better trade terms. Manufacturers won't eat the loss. Retailers won't slash their margins. So once again, ordinary consumers are left holding the bag. And it's not just bread. Breakfast cereals, especially staple brands like Cheerios, Corn Flakes, and Raisin Bran, are seeing fast price hikes. A 12-ounce box at Target is now listed at $5.59, up from under $4 just a month ago. For families with small children or elderly members who rely on cereal daily, this isn't just a minor inconvenience. It's a growing burden. But what's truly unsettling isn't the one-time price spike. It's the creeping sense of losing control. These aren't luxury goods you can skip. They're breakfast basics. They're what you grab when you're rushing out the door, or when your wallet says no to dinner. And if even these staples are starting to slip out of reach, what is safe in the supermarket anymore? Maybe you made it through rising gas prices. Maybe you managed when steak became a splurge. Maybe you gave up dining out. But when bread prices climb past your breaking point, It feels like every limit you had is falling apart. Nothing stings more than watching the familiar. Things you never used to think twice about turn on you quietly, making you feel small in your own life. If you've ever eaten cereal before work, if you've ever toasted a slice of bread to sip with coffee, if you've ever picked up a sandwich loaf and stretched it into weekday lunches, you understand the feeling how losing one small thing can throw off your whole day. So the question is, where does this stop? When trade policy becomes a power game, when prices rise and no one takes responsibility, what do everyday people like you and me have left to hold on to? Have you noticed something off in your bread and cereal habits? Have you ever set a box back on the shelf because the price felt insane? If so, you're not alone. Share in the comments, because maybe your voice is exactly what someone else needs to hear, to feel less alone in this high-stakes survival race. Number 6. Imported fresh fruit. Have you ever looked at an apple or a bunch of grapes in the supermarket and had to consider the price per piece? If not, you probably haven't lived in America lately. Since early August, prices for imported fresh fruits at Walmart, Costco, Trader Joe's, and Whole Foods have surged noticeably. Gala apples from New Zealand, seedless grapes from Chile, blueberries from Canada, mangoes from Mexico, all are up between 20% to 35% depending on type and timing. That might not sound too terrible, until you realize these are the foods we've been told to eat every day. Doctors, dietitians, public health organizations all emphasize the importance of fresh fruit in a healthy diet, especially for older adults. But now, following that simple advice is starting to require budgeting. The reason isn't a mystery. The Trump administration's tariffs, aimed at tightening imports and pressuring trade partners, have sparked a wave of retaliation. One of the clearest responses has been to slash agricultural exports to the US. Some countries are even shifting focus to markets in Europe and Asia, where trade policies are more stable and predictable. And so from massive supply chains stretching through Peru, Chile, Canada, Mexico, the fruits that were once staples in the American household are becoming scarce and expensive. But no one really explains that to you. They just change the price. Quietly, coldly. Have you ever picked up a box of blueberries and put it back? Planned on buying 2 apples, then switched to bananas? Just because they're cheaper? Watched your grandchild bite into a single grape and thought, that one grape costs more than candy now. Maybe you've never said it out loud, but the anxiety is building. Not just about money, but about health and quality of life. Because nobody feels okay about cutting fruit out of their diet over price. If seniors start eating less fruit, if kids no longer get fresh produce every day, if that fruit drawer in the fridge stays empty for days at a time, the consequences aren't just about taste, they're about real health. The question is, why wasn't this flagged sooner? Why didn't the government or retailers warn us? Maybe because fruit is one of those things nobody notices until it's gone. And that's the scariest part. Fruit, once a symbol of health and clean living, is becoming a luxury. Something people now weigh and consider one piece at a time. If you've always chosen fresh fruit over fast food, if you've believed that healthy eating saves on medical bills down the road, if you've tried to take care of your body through your grocery choices, then here's the question for you. When those choices start getting squeezed, what do you have left? Open your banking app, look at your balance, then walk back to the fruit section at your nearest store. You'll feel what millions of Americans are beginning to experience, a creeping sense of unease in the smallest, most familiar decisions. Are you feeling it too? Are you changing your grocery habits over a single apple or a box of blueberries? If so, you're not alone. Share your story. We're listening. Number 7, fruit juice. There are some things you assume will always have a place in your cart. Like a bottle of orange juice, a carton of grape juice, or a morning blend you keep chilled for easy sipping. Healthy, convenient, easy to digest, and still recommended by doctors, especially for seniors, diabetics, or young children. But then one day, you and a loved one are standing in the juice aisle at Walmart. You're having a quiet disagreement. Quiet enough to keep voices low, but loud enough that a nearby staff member glances your way. The 100% apple juice you always buy has jumped from $2.89 to $4.49. At that price, you could buy milk bread, or even add a carton of eggs to your breakfast. Surprised, that seemingly harmless bottle of juice has now become a wedge. One person wants to keep up healthy habits. The other wants to tighten the budget. And both are right. Because truth is, fruit juice no longer qualifies as reasonably priced. This price hike has multiple causes: imported fruit shortages, rising bottling costs due to spikes in aluminum and glass prices, and of course the new round of tariffs signed by President Trump, making raw ingredients more expensive across the board. But the real story here isn't just about money. It's about the helplessness of watching life's little comforts become hard to reach, and even sadder. Seeing that happen just as you're trying to live well. Have you ever hesitated over your go-to bottle of juice switched to a watered-down, sugar-heavy version just because it's cheaper? If so, don't feel bad. Millions of others are likely facing the exact same struggle you are. When basic things like coffee bread or juice start to feel like burdens, it's more than just an economic problem. It's a wake-up call for the quiet losses happening every day in the lives of millions of Americans. Nobody wants to count eggs or calculate toast slices. But when decisions from Washington start affecting the food on your kitchen table, it's time we stop pretending everything's fine.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.